Welcome to Overcaffeinated and Out of Effs, the podcast for burned out, career-minded moms who are ready to stop pretending everything's fine and feel like themselves again. I'm your host, Christy Gamir, burnout coach for moms, licensed therapist, and mom of two. And I'm here to help you reclaim your energy, your identity, and your peace of mind. Whether you're lying awake thinking about the 87 things you didn't get done, or silently resenting the people you love most, this is your space to feel seen, supported, and not so alone. So grab your coffee, hot, cold, or day old, and let's get into it. Hey everybody, it's Christy. Welcome to Overcaffeinated and Out of Effs. Before we get started, I had mentioned this last week and just wanted to share one more quick reminder that 1 week from today will be the release of episode 52. So we will be celebrating 1 year of this podcast, which I think is very, very exciting. I will share what I mean by that on that day in 1 week, June 30th. So be sure to check it out. Okay, and now to today's guest episode. In today's episode, I'd like to welcome our guest, Beth Lent. Beth has overcome burnout as a single divorced mom and self-employed wellness professional. She hopes to save as many women as possible from years of exhaustion and or autoimmune disorders by sharing her story and tips on how to put ourselves on our priority list. Also worth mentioning is the reality and hidden wisdoms of perimenopause. Hint, it's to learn our limits and slow the F down. So I've invited Beth here today. She's going to talk a bit about her own personal story with burnout as a self-employed, single divorced mom. And she's also going to share her expertise as a wellness professional to help other burned out, career-minded moms. So Beth, thank you so much for being here today.
My pleasure. This is great. I love the title of your podcast. It's just
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. Can you maybe just start off by telling us a little bit more about yourself? So talk maybe a little bit about what season of motherhood you're in right now, how you got into your work, all of those kinds of things.
Okay, for sure. I have a teenage daughter who's 14 years old.
Mm-hmm.
I've been raising her on my own since she's 3,
Mm-hmm.
2.5. She is when we were separated. And being the mom of a teenage daughter, it just really brings home that I am a role model, and how I live really, really impacts her and how she views life, how she values herself, like learning how to how I take care of myself. It's gonna pour over.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm very aware of the power of that relationship. Such powerful, she's learning so much from me. So yeah.
Yeah, no, absolutely. We're all role models, right? Our kids observe and they pick up so much all the time. So I'm curious. So when you talk about, being a single parent, just so I can kind of get a better sense of what that looks like for you, like, do you have a co-parenting partner? Are you really
Yeah.
sort of doing this entirely on your own? Like, what does that look like?
Well, for the sake of respect for my ex-husband, I'm not going to go into too much detail
Mm-hmm.
about why I divorced him, just because it's his own. I feel like
Yeah.
that's private.
Yeah.
But let's just say that I'm the responsible parent.
Okay.
And we started out when went through a mediator. It went very, very smoothly. We said it was verbal 50-50, but it was more like 80-20 where I was taking care of the baby 80% of the time, even though I was working, and the baby was in daycare. And then she went through a period just a couple of years ago. She's like, I want to be at daddy's house half the time. And I was like, okay. And that
Mm-hmm.
was a big adjustment for me. And then just recently, she's like, I want to be at your house. And then she doesn't sleep at his house at all. So,
Okay.
so I've been very careful to kind of go with the flow. And at the beginning, he didn't, let's just say he's never fought me for anything, but he's always been like, okay, sure. Okay, sure. So he's always like, okay with my lead, which,
Mhm.
which is a blessing. I think
Yeah.
a lot of women go through terrible struggles with their exes, with, co-parenting and the fights with divorce. I mean, I've heard it all. It could be brutal. So I've gotten off pretty easy, but it's not easy to be the discipline the
Yeah.
disciplined
Yeah.
parent, you know?
Well, and I do think, one of the things that is, that's always important to sort of think about. One of the things I always wonder about, when I'm talking to different moms is the kind of support that they do have, right? Because married and
Mm,
non-married women both, sometimes there are people in our lives who are very supportive, other times maybe not as much. And being and then being divorced, of course, being a single parent sort of adds another layer to that. So that's just something that I try to get sort of the picture of people's
right.
individual sort of stories and circumstances, just because there are so many people out there with these different kind of support systems, and that sort of affects how they do things. So,
Absolutely.
kind of going back then, so your daughter's older now. It sounds like you've been single parent for many, many years, but going back to those earlier years, maybe the time when you feel like your burnout was the worst. I don't know if that was right after the divorce, maybe more recently, but thinking back to that time, what did a normal day look like for you?
I love the way you just shared all of that because I think my lack of support,
Mhm.
my I didn't have family support. I'm the black sheep of the family. I
Mhm.
didn't know until 2 years ago that I have ADHD.
Mhm.
And a part of my neurodivergence they say with neurodivergence, you're more susceptible to burnout.
Mhm.
And I consider myself a highly sensitive person. And so I would say there's gotta be a really big connection to a lack of support and burnout because we're not
Mhm.
meant to do life on our own. We need support systems, you know? And
Yeah.
my experience when I left my ex was the opposite of support. Everybody was like, "Oh my god," right? This the drama of my life. It was on my second marriage, thankfully, first time having a child, but I've had a history of unhealthy short-term relationships,
Mhm.
and that comes from my family of origin stuff,
Mhm.
which had inherently a lack of support.
Mhm.
And, I don't think there's enough conversation around people who just don't feel supported by their family.
Mhm.
If you do I find I've always been the black sheep, I was always the nonconformist, and I was punished for that,
Mhm.
I didn't feel a sense of belonging, and
Mhm.
as a result, I feel like I missed out on support because my values just weren't aligned with theirs.
Mhm.
So, all of that to say, um, my burnout really started blossoming or it was gradual. I was burning the candle at both ends right after I gave birth and realized that the marriage was not a good idea. Right.
Mhm.
I rushed into the relationship. We got pregnant 4 months in. I got knocked up at 37 years old.
Mhm.
But I mean, I knew this person from high school, so it was like
Mhm.
I knew him. We had a history, but I got pregnant fast. It was a shotgun wedding, right?
Mhm.
I mean, and
Mhm.
it's hilarious to say because I was 37 years old, and my family was appalled that I had left the last guy and I got pregnant like less than 5 months later with a
Mhm.
new guy
Mhm.
who and so they couldn't even comprehend, and actually, they didn't speak to me through most of my pregnancy,
Oh my gosh, okay.
which was very stressful, right? And
Yeah.
that's really, like, the key, I think, is how stressed I was, feeling unsupported, but also I was used to feeling unsupported,
Mhm.
right? So
Mhm.
when my symptoms after I had the baby, I was just, tired, but started to drink more caffeine. and, running the way I always had.
Mhm.
But what happened is I noticed, I would say when COVID hit, that was when everything kind of went full throttle. Because
Mhm.
my massage practice was shutting down. My daughter was now homeschooling,
Mhm.
virtually. So she was how old? 3rd grade, right?
Mhm.
And I had to figure out how to cover my bills, and all I remember is, like, I just couldn't sleep, and I
Mhm.
couldn't get out of bed when like, I was
Mhm.
up all night, and then I would finally get to sleep, and I was exhausted in the morning and all through the day, and I couldn't nap because my brain was going on overdrive, and I think that there was this intersection of, you know, global pandemic with
Mhm.
chronic stress, burnout coming, and then perimenopause, where my
Mhm.
hormones completely dropped, right? The estrogen drops. And I think that was like the perfect storm. And
Mhm.
then my thyroid started to go off.
Mhm.
During that time, I started to get a weird acne on my face. I was having these weird symptoms, and it's all like I had nothing. I was running on fumes basically throughout COVID, and then I had to keep on keeping on.
Yeah.
Well, how did
Yeah.
I keep doing it? Well, I was just overcaffeinated, right? And I was
Mhm.
I just plugged in away, and then I got Graves, and when I got Graves, um, I had decided that wellness was gonna be my top priority. I'm gonna focus on lowering inflammation. I was having chronic headaches, like, every other day, or
Mhm.
sometimes, cluster headaches, and it was just a nightmare. And by the way, all of this is happening as I'm developing my somatic exercise method for people who hate to exercise, like
Mhm.
me. And at the same time, I did a nutrition coaching program so that I could learn how to feed myself and identify food sensitivities, because I was trying to figure all this stuff out while I was in it, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and then on top of that, you had mentioned, you talked about the perfect storm. You talked about, feeling really unsupported. You also made a comment, you said, "Oh, but I was used to it," right? Almost like,
Mm,
I don't know,
listen.
what I took away from that was sort of this expectation that because I'm used to it, I quote unquote should know how to handle it, or I should be able to handle it. But as we were talking about, support is such an important thing for so many people. Um, and I'm curious, because as we were talking about earlier, there are a lot of people have varying degrees of support. And when you are a single divorced mom, that sort of adds another layer to it. And so I'm curious, like, how do you feel like that, being single, how do you feel like that did impact you and your burnout maybe differently than those who have different levels of support, who have more support.
Mm, I think, I mean, thank God I have had a therapist
Mhm,
from when my daughter was about 3.5, 4 years,
mhm,
and I still see her. She's
mhm,
phenomenal, and thank God for her, because I don't know what I would have done if I not had her. And I would say, like, when you're used to being without support, you're used to minimizing how you feel,
mhm,
because you gotta just keep going.
mhm,
And I think but then it's also can be a trap too, because I've heard of people who have tons of support, and all they really do is commiserate about their problems with no solutions,
yeah,
right? So there's like two sides of the coin, right? Like, you're
mhm,
damned if you do, damned if you don't. But I would say for me, like, pretending
mhm,
until I could no longer pretend. Like, when I really was done mid-COVID and my numbers tanked,
mhm,
my thyroid numbers tanked, and I could just I had nothing.
Well, and it sounds like, there was really a lot happening. It sounds like there were huge impacts on you, mentally, emotionally, and physically, right? You had all of these things
Oh, and
happening.
and by the way, I started to dip my toe into corporate wellness education during
Okay.
during COVID. So I
Yeah.
was, like, not walking the talk, but
Mhm.
I had to because it was an amazing opportunity to take my education about
Mhm.
nutrition and wellness, but I felt like such a fraud. But
Okay.
but at the same time, like, I loved working with people. I was doing group presentations, and it was a phenomenal experience, but I was still, like, not sleeping. How was I functioning? It was like
Right.
when that corporate relationship, I needed to end it because I had nothing.
Well, and I'm curious, right? Because a lot of people who experience burnout, they feel like they're just sort of stuck in on this hamster wheel that they can't get off of, and they just have to keep going, 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 and it's never going to end, right? That's one of the differences, between burnout and stress. Where stress, there can be more of a hopeful feeling, like, oh, I just have to get through this week, or I just have to get through this project, and then things will be better. But with burnout, it's sort of the opposite where it's like, "Oh my gosh, this is just going and going and going, and how is it ever gonna get better?" You know? And so
Yes.
I'm curious for you, because it does sound like there was a lot happening. Was there a point when you sort of realized, "Okay, this isn't working. Like, I need to do something differently. I need to start taking care of myself in a different way."
Yeah, when I was diagnosed with Graves,
Mhm. Okay.
I I I said, like, "I've gotta just make myself a priority," and I started to say no to things, and
Mhm.
I just stayed home. Sweatpants became my favorite clothing item. I've started to prioritize how I felt,
Okay.
and I let the dishes stay in the sink overnight. You know, I let
Yeah.
I just I hired a cleaning person, you know,
Mhm.
when I could afford it, or
Mhm.
at a even if I couldn't afford it, like, I was
Yeah.
just like, I have to respect how I feel. I think almost the gift of it is that
Mhm.
I was forced to start caring about how I felt,
Well,
and you
oh, go
can't do
ahead.
that, right? A
Yeah.
healthy person cares how they feel. A healthy person, women need to care how they feel because when they feel well, everybody freaking it gets along better. When we feel like crap, it's like everybody's punished.
Well, and I think that's one of the challenges, right? I think there are a lot of women, a lot of people who deep down kind of know that, like when they are better, other people in their family are doing better, other people in their world, but there's still a struggle to prioritize ourselves, to put ourselves first, right? There's just this tendency, for so many women to prioritize everybody else and to put themselves last. And to really make that shift takes a lot of intention. It can take a lot of, you know
You're gonna disappoint people.
Yeah, well, absolutely, and I'm curious, because as you started to do this, as you started to really do the things that you felt like you needed to do for you, okay, yeah, maybe people were disappointed, and I know for some women, the challenge can be with feelings of guilt and whatnot, and so I'm curious, were there any emotional challenges that you remember dealing with when you did first start making those shifts?
You said it, guilt.
Okay.
Guilt. I mean, I had to survive on very small savings for
Mhm.
a couple of months, and I felt like all the labels of laziness came
Mhm.
up, and I've been a hard worker my whole life,
Mhm.
and so for me to take rest was like and I've heard a lot of people are, you know, condemned for that, if you've "What do you mean you don't wanna work?"
Mhm.
I've heard, wives tell me that their husbands are saying that, like,
Well, and I'll tell you, a lot of the people that I've worked with, a lot of that is also self-imposed. Like, yeah, sometimes we get those messages from our partners, from our spouses, like, "You should, quote, unquote, be doing more." But I've also known so many women who really struggle with taking time for themselves, for taking a pause when they do have other things still to do on their to-do list. There's can be this mentality of, I have things to do and I have this time, so I should be doing those things. And that time for themselves is not being valued the same way. And again, bringing up guilt. And I think some of that is like conditioning,
I
these
think it's
societal
absolutely more
expectations.
common with women
Yeah,
because
absolutely.
women do so much more mental and emotional work
Yeah.
than traditional
Mhm.
male roles, right?
Mhm.
Like,
Yeah.
masculine roles are go to work and you play with the kids a little bit, but you're not like I feel like women take on so much more. And
Mhm.
I think generationally, like ancestrally, there's this negation of our own needs and everybody else comes first. And
Yeah.
it's making us sick.
Yeah.
I
Well,
mean,
and to
autoimmunity is like 80% women, something ridiculous
Mhm.
like that.
Well, and to that point, I'm curious, obviously, you work as a wellness professional, and so you probably see these kinds of things a lot. And so when you do work with, some of these burned out moms, or what are some of the biggest health effects or health consequences that you are seeing in these people, especially when they struggle to make the changes necessary to really work through or overcome that?
Depression, weight gain, anxiety, uh, self-medicating, drinking alcohol,
Mhm.
like numbing it out.
Mhm.
And, and depression is huge,
Mhm.
where it's like we people learn that I'm just not important. But there's there's that, and then there's also like the inability to like let go of control, right? We don't
Mhm.
want to disappoint other people, or we have an image to protect, or right, like I can't not do that. That's not me, you know.
Mhm.
Um, I would say, weight gain is a really common, right? Because I'm an emotional eater, and I'm in recovery from food disordered eating and whatnot, because an eating, horrible food definitely contributes to your brain chemistry in a negative way and perpetuates this, you know, the the hamster wheel
Mhm.
of self-minimization, you know? So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, and okay, and so one of the things that you had talked about earlier, you had talked about your own experience with burnout during a time of, perimenopause. And I'm wondering if we can maybe just talk a little bit about that because so many women are raising kids while going through that. And I'm wondering if we can just kind of talk about that a little bit and the connection to burnout. So, for starters, just for people who are so we're all on the same page. How would you describe perimenopause? What would be like the main things that people are really sort of experiencing and noticing during that time?
Well, I think, it's very different for different women, and the tragedy is
Mhm.
that no woman very rarely do women get a little lesson in what's coming.
Mhm.
It's usually when the shit's hitting the fan that we start getting interested in perimenopause.
Mhm.
So, when I had the rash, coming across on my face, and I never had skin problems my entire life, and
Mhm.
I was 40, I don't know, 46 or something, when
Mhm.
this I'm like, "What is this?" And I thought it was nutritional,
Mhm.
and nobody told me that rashes and skin problems is a sign of perimenopause.
Mhm.
Brain fog, classic, hot flashes, and some women, God bless them, don't have any hot flashes. I had hot flashes that were continuous. Like I felt like I felt like I had a fever all day long and
Mhm.
every 10 minutes. And they link CPTSD, right? Childhood trauma, you know, severe chronic stress over a lifetime with more perimenopausal symptoms.
Mhm.
Which
Mhm.
totally makes sense to me.
Yeah, yeah, no,
It's
absolutely.
coming down the pike, like we should
Mhm.
all find out about it because God willing, it's gonna happen unless
Mhm.
you know,
Yeah.
it's coming.
I feel like there are a lot of things that we don't really find out about until after we are already in them.
Ready,
As you're
ready.
talking, I'm thinking about my own experiences with, like, having a baby, and all the things that you learn after you're already in it, and you're
Yeah,
talking obviously about the same idea with perimenopause, but, yeah, it's I feel like it makes things feel that much harder when you are not prepared and don't have your expectations managed
I
for
wanna
the coming.
I wanna share with you when my friend who's 10 years younger than me questioned my symptoms as, "Maybe it's perimenopause." I was offended. That's how culturally taboo it is, and because to be an aging woman, right? All the
Mhm,
negative connotations in our culture, like, we really base our worth in youth, and
mhm,
it's really BS. It
mhm,
really
yeah.
is because we become wiser, and I think the maybe reason why it might be demonified is because 'cause we're actually smarter, and they're like, wanna kinda, like, try to minimize that, but no, we're like, we become wiser, and we also, as I said, come full circle here, we learn to take better care of ourselves because we've suffered the consequences of not doing such,
Yeah, no,
right? Like, the
absolutely.
only women in their 30s or even their 20s that take their health seriously is either A, they learned it from role modeling from their
Mhm,
parents and their family and their support
mhm,
system, or something happened that
mhm,
made them have to care about their wellness and their
yeah, yeah. Well, and so I'm curious, so coming back to the relationship between perimenopause and burnout,
Mhm.
what are some ways that perimenopause can make those symptoms worse? Like, how does that what is what would you say based on your experiences maybe the relationship there?
Well, what comes to mind is, the sex hormones and
Mhm,
stress hormones, they're not separate. They're not in a vacuum, they're not separate operating systems. They're together,
mhm,
So when your cortisol is activated and your sleep hormones are off, right? It's going to
mhm,
impact perimenopause. And I think that's why burnout is so common midlife, right?
mhm,
It's like
mhm,
that perfect intersection of I'm running out of steam. Oh, and you're running out of estrogen too.
mhm. Mhm. Well, and so with that knowledge, right, with that awareness, like, what are some things that you wish more moms knew about the importance of taking care of themselves, especially, later on, like, midlife versus when they're younger?
um, uh, two things come to mind because they're near and dear to what has helped me and how I help others, which
Mhm,
is you gotta make some time for yourself at least every day, a
mhm,
half hour. Like,
mhm,
everybody needs a half hour of what can I do for me, for my
mhm,
body, for my spirit that
mhm,
gets me feeling a moment of peacefulness, of relaxation, of a break, and it's not
mhm,
doom scrolling, by the way.
mhm,
That's not relaxing, I'm
mhm,
talking about unplugging for a half hour, and where I like to take that is going on a walk, going in
mhm,
the woods, sitting by the waterfall for, I don't know,
mhm,
minutes. Just and of course, taking care of your nutrition, that's a no-brainer, but
mhm.
you know, it's easier said than done, a lot of people think, but it's also like there's a lot of it's not all or nothing is my point. You
Cool.
don't have to be like 0 to 60,
Well, and you're talking about, obviously the nutrition part, but honestly, even the first point that you made, about having that half hour of time for yourself. I mean, I agree with you. I think that that's something that everybody deserves, everybody needs. Like, we need that time for us, for ourselves. But as we were just talking about, moms a lot of times really struggle to prioritize themselves. And I imagine that there are probably people listening thinking, half hour, that is easier said than done, right? Half
Mm,
hour can feel like a huge chunk of time to carve out for some people who just feel like there is not enough time in the day. So I'm curious, like,
well,
when you talk to those people, what sorts of things do you say to them to help them prioritize that 30 minutes to actually be able to find and carve out that time and know that it's okay to do that?
how about this one? How about if you're doing your most of your day completely alone,
Mhm.
how about finding a buddy to do
Mhm.
something with? Because we're not meant to be alone all day doing all the things. And a
Mhm.
lot of, like, not single moms, but moms who work, they're full-time moms,
Mhm.
or they're work from home. They have a lot of I know a ton of women who work remotely, right?
Mhm.
And then they're raising kids, and and then they gotta get food on the table, and they're doing they're wearing, how many hats in a day?
Mhm.
So I would say, who can you team up with? Where
Mhm.
can you find your people that you
Mhm.
can, push the baby carriage together and go on a walk together?
Mhm.
I'm sure you may have heard about, like, it's really not a newsflash, but we're social creatures,
Yeah.
and women are we have neural networks that make it vital for our thriving on our mental health, and of course, our hormones
Yeah.
are benefited by social connections, meaningful social connections,
Mhm.
so I think taking that half hour, well, who can you cooperate with? Like, where are your people? Find your people.
Well, I think not only is that good for people, like to your point, we're social beings, we're social creatures, it really benefits us to have that connection. But also I find that a lot of people are more likely to follow through on things when they are accountable to other people as well. I found with a lot of the people that I work with, it's easier for them to sort of dismiss things or push things aside or not prioritize them when it's quote unquote just for them, but when other people are involved, they feel more of a sense of obligation to follow through with whatever the plan was.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. And what I love about, partnering with people is that it's win-win. We're
Mhm.
both getting a huge benefit out of this thing,
Yeah.
and I know tons of people, I wish I was one of these people, but I've moved too many times
Yeah.
who, have walking buddies for years,
Mhm.
running buddies for years.
Yeah. Well, and I'll be honest, like in my neighborhood, we have a bunch of walking trails around, and
Mm.
especially when the weather is nice, and I've seen people like in the morning, I'll be standing at the bus stop and I see some ladies walking together and I'll be sitting in my home office and I look out the window and I see some ladies walking together. And I think that that's so wonderful when I see that because, well, one, this is an area where it's not always nice enough during the year to really get out and do that, but also this social piece, right? I love seeing when women are actually taking time out of their day to do those things because to your point, it's really good for them both of them, in so many different ways.
There's a couple of things that come to mind. One is that, you know, there's also, like, the tag team effect, right? So you have let's just use this example of having a partner with a walking buddy. You're like, "Hey, I wanna go on a walk on my own. Can you watch the kids and I'll
Mhm,
go," right? This is like this village kind of effect where, like, I'll watch your kids if you watch mine, and we can kind of have that going on. And then the other thing that came up more importantly and on a deeper level is, women who isolate as it's a real barrier.
mhm,
There's T-shirts all over the place about, we like our dogs and our cats more than we like people. And
mm,
a lot of people have trust issues with other women and other
mhm,
people. And so I think that's a real barrier. And, for folks who struggle with that, you know, there's amazing resources out there. Of course, this is what's so great about the internet, right? Like,
Mhm.
how do you get out of isolation if you're self-soothing with, you know, social media, and it's so easy to stay in your own little isolated world
Yeah.
and think, and then there's like the minimization of burnout, right? There's like this social conditioning of push through and invalidate how you feel. I mean, there's so much medical bypassing going on, uh, where people are just written off for having these symptoms, and they're like tearing their hair out of their head because nobody's validating what they're legitimately going through.
Well, and that's honestly a big part of the reason I started this podcast, because I feel like these conversations are so important. It's so important because I do think motherhood, there is a huge sense of loneliness and isolation. And I think you talk about minimizing burnout. I think that it's important for people to hear these stories, have these things be validated, know that they're not alone, know that there are other women and moms going through obviously their own individual stories, their own individual journeys, but there's so much overlap. There's so many similarities between the things that we're experiencing. And I think that it's really, really important for people to hear those stories. So I do appreciate you very much taking time out of your day to have this conversation with me. But before we kind of start to wrap up for today, I'm wondering, so for people who want to learn more about you, learn more about the work that you do, where can they go to do that?
You can go to my website, which
Okay.
is inneralignmenteducation.com. And what I really feel called to offer is the somatic exercise that I offer. So for women who are too tired and hate the gym, I
Mm-hmm.
work with people one-on-one virtually, and 30-minute gentle movement sessions. So,
Mm-hmm.
right, you get that connection, and then you get a little bit of a workout, and I think that's a great, like, stepping stone for kinda getting out of isolation, just to
Okay.
get that out there. I'm on Instagram and Facebook, and you could find me there on it's Inner Alignment Education, I think, is my Instagram, and then you could just find me by name on Facebook.
Okay,
And I'm
great.
on YouTube, but minimally. I mean, you
Oh,
could you could check out some of my my philosophy, and I do some movement shorts on there as well. So
okay. Well, thank you. And
I'm
I
not hard
will and I'll make sure, of course, that all of that is on the show notes so that anybody who's listening who wants to look you up can do that easily. Okay, and so before we, one final thing I like to ask everybody before we wrap up is if you could leave the listeners with one final message, one final piece of advice, maybe related to, your experience and expertise as a wellness professional, what would it be?
The word sisterhood comes to mind, reviving our own sisterhood that we really need to do that work in order to receive the support that we really deserve.
Mhm.
Just leave it
Okay.
there. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Great. Well, again, thank you so much. I know that your time is valuable. I know I said this to you before, and I really, really mean that. I don't take it for granted. So I do appreciate it. And as always, for the moms who are listening, if any of this resonates, if you found the things we talked about today to be helpful or valuable, please look up Lisa Beth, see what she's offering. Please share the podcast with other moms that could use some support because we are all in this together.
Amen, sister.